Colton shoved my duffel bag out onto the front porch like it was garbage. "The lock's getting changed tomorrow morning, Allie. You need to figure your life out somewhere else." I stood there on the porch of the house we'd both grown up in, staring at that door lock and trying to swallow my pride. It kept getting stuck in my throat. I wanted to argue, to remind him that Mom had left the house to both of us, not just him. But his face was set like stone, and I knew nothing I said would matter. I picked up my bag, walked down those familiar steps into the dark street, and made myself a promise. I would never, ever beg him for anything again. Whatever happened next, I'd handle it on my own terms. The city hall lobby smelled like burnt coffee and papers that had been sitting in filing cabinets for decades. I'd gotten a temp job there processing permit applications because it was the only thing I could find quickly. On my first day, a woman came to the counter crying over a lost building permit. She'd been trying to renovate her late mother's house for months, but the paperwork kept getting rejected. I looked at her application for maybe 2 minutes and found the error. Someone had checked the wrong box on page 3. I fixed it, resubmitted it, and watched it get approved on the spot. She hugged me so tight across that counter that I could barely breathe. "You just saved my house," she whispered. I'd never felt that useful in my entire life. The filing system at City Hall was a complete disaster. Files jammed in drawers that wouldn't open. Temporary passwords that expired before anyone could use them. Applications that disappeared into some kind of digital black hole. Everyone just blamed the system and shrugged like there was nothing anyone could do about it. During my lunch break, I built a simple tracking spreadsheet on my phone. I color-coded everything. Red cells showed where applications were stuck and dying. Yellow meant in progress. Green meant approved and moving forward. It was basic, but it worked. By the end of my first week, I could see patterns in the chaos. I could see exactly where hope went to die in the bureaucracy, and I started figuring out how to fix it. I rewrote one instruction line in the application process. Just one line that had been confusing people for years. I made it clearer, simpler, more direct. Within a month, permit rejections dropped by half. My supervisor, Mrs. Chin, called me into her office and just blinked at the numbers on her screen. "How did you do this?" she asked. I shrugged and said it wasn't that complicated, just needed someone to actually look at it. She asked what else I thought I could fix. I had a list. A long list. She told me to write it up formally. 2 weeks later, I got an email that changed everything. They were promoting me to Community Grants Coordinator. Same building, but suddenly I had real responsibility and keys to offices I'd never been allowed in before. I was still riding the night bus back to my friend Marcus's couch every evening with cup noodles for dinner. The house Colton had kicked me out of felt like it existed in another lifetime, even though it had only been 6 weeks. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger took too much energy. Instead, I was focused. Focused on building something that nobody could take away from me. During the bus ride, I'd work on my phone, planning improvements to the grants process. Tomorrow, I would test a full application checklist I designed. Tomorrow, I would make things better. The couch wasn't comfortable and the noodles weren't great, but I was moving forward. That's what mattered. Every single day, I was moving forward toward something bigger. The promotion came with a cheap office and a nameplate that said Community Grants Coordinator in printed letters. I bought a blazer from a thrift store for $12 and set my alarm for 5 in the morning. I wanted to be the first person in the office every day. I wanted to prove that I deserved this position. My new job was reviewing applications for city grants that helped small businesses and contractors improve their operations. Good grants meant safer buildings, better jobs, and stronger neighborhoods. Bad grants meant waste, fraud, and people getting hurt. I took the responsibility seriously. Maybe more seriously than anyone had taken it before. I read every application completely, checked every reference, and followed up on every single red flag that appeared. I opened an after-hours help desk twice a week in the City Hall lobby. People could come in after work and get help with their grant applications. They showed up with shoe boxes full of receipts, crumpled invoices, and no idea how to organize any of it. We'd sit together at folding tables, sorting papers, stapling things in order, filling out forms correctly. I taught them what documentation they needed and why it mattered. Word spread faster than any flyer I could have posted. Soon we had lines of people waiting every Tuesday and Thursday evening. Small contractors, family businesses, people trying to build something honest. They needed help, and I could give it to them. It felt good. It felt like I was finally doing something that actually mattered in the world. I added 3 non-negotiable rules to the grant application process. First, you needed proof of workers' compensation insurance. Second, you needed proper licenses for any specialized work. Third, you needed real payroll records showing you paid your workers legally and on time. I wasn't trying to scare anyone away. I was just enforcing basic fairness and safety. Honest contractors lined up at my desk and thanked me because now they weren't competing against people who cut corners and undercut prices by breaking the rules. The dishonest ones complained to my supervisor, but the numbers backed me up. Our grants were going to legitimate businesses that actually completed projects safely. The complaints eventually stopped, and the honest contractors kept lining up. I was reviewing applications one Tuesday afternoon when a familiar logo caught my eye on my screen. Heart Remodeling. That was Colton's company. The company he'd started with money from Mom's life insurance, money he'd refused to share with me. His application was marked incomplete, which meant it was sitting in limbo waiting for more documentation. I sat there staring at that logo for a long time. My hand hovered over my mouse. I could have ignored it, passed it to someone else. But that would have been dishonest. I clicked the application open with a completely steady hand. If I was going to do this job right, I had to do it right for everyone. Even him. Colton's application was a mess. No workers' compensation insurance on file. Invoices that were vague and missing details. Multiple cash payments listed to someone named CJ, with no last name, no address, no tax documentation. Everything about it screamed problems. These weren't small oversights. These were serious compliance issues that I couldn't ignore, no matter whose application it was. I created a detailed list of everything that needed to be corrected and uploaded. I changed the status to Needs Documentation and typed up a formal request explaining exactly what was missing and what needed to be provided. Then I hit send. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. This was my job. I was just doing my job correctly. My phone rang at midnight. I was half asleep on Marcus's couch when I saw Colton's name on the screen. I almost didn't answer. "You can push this through, right?" he said without even saying hello. No apology for calling so late. No acknowledgement of anything that had happened between us. Just an assumption that I'd bend the rules for him. I sat up and said very clearly, "I can help you meet the requirements." That's all I can do. There was a long silence. Then he swore under his breath, said something I couldn't quite hear, and hung up without a goodbye. I sat there in the dark holding my phone. My hands were shaking now, but I knew I'd done the right thing. Rules existed for a reason. Colton showed up at City Hall 3 days later. I heard him before I saw him. His voice echoed through the lobby, loud and angry and demanding. "She's my sister. She can fix this." The security guard looked at me, asking with his eyes if this man was bothering me. I shook my head and walked out to the lobby. Colton's face was red, and he was holding his rejected application like it was a weapon. "You're doing this because you're still mad about the house," he said. I kept my voice calm and professional. "I'm doing this because these are the rules." Here's the packet explaining exactly what you need to provide. I handed him the documents. He glared at me like I was a stranger, then turned and left without another word. A few days later, the compliance department received an anonymous tip through their online reporting system. Check Heart Remodeling's billing on the Pine Street project. Possible double billing. I didn't send that tip. I didn't know who did. But once it was logged in the system, I had a legal obligation to forward it to the auditor's office. So I did. I attached the relevant forms, wrote a neutral cover note, and sent it through official channels. Then I made myself a cup of coffee and went back to helping the people in line at my evening clinic. I couldn't control what the audit would find. I could only control doing my job with integrity. That was the only power I actually had in this situation. On Saturday morning, I ran a free clinic teaching small contractors the basics of payroll systems and documentation. About 20 people showed up in a community center room that smelled like old basketballs. We covered tax forms, wage records, and insurance requirements. A woman in the back started crying when she finally understood what she needed to do, and I helped her complete her application right there. It got approved on the spot. She thanked me about 10 times. When I drove back to Marcus's apartment that evening, I noticed Colton's truck parked outside on the street. He was sitting in the driver's seat, waiting. My stomach tightened, but I didn't run. I walked up to the truck and asked what he wanted. He got out of the truck and met me in the alley beside the building. Family helps family, Allie. That's how it's supposed to work. His voice was different now. Not angry. Almost pleading. I looked at him and said very quietly, family doesn't owe each other anything. Remember? Those were your exact words when you threw me out. The words hit him like I'd slapped him across the face. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. He turned around and walked back to his truck. This time he didn't slam the door. He just got in, started the engine, and drove away slowly. I stood there in the alley for a long time, breathing hard, feeling something that might have been sadness or might have been relief. The auditors formally requested bank statements and time sheets from Heart Remodeling for the Pine Street project. I saw the request come through the system because everything was logged centrally. The numbers they were seeing clearly didn't match up. The materials costs wobbled between invoices. The labor hours didn't make sense for the timeline. I stayed completely silent about all of it. I didn't talk to Colton. I didn't offer help. I didn't interfere. I just kept booking more Saturday clinics and helping the people who actually wanted to follow the rules. That was my job. The audit was the auditor's job. I couldn't do both, and I wasn't going to try. Some lines you just don't cross, no matter who's involved. The mayor did a surprise walkthrough of our evening helpline one Tuesday. He walked along the tables where we were helping people organize their paperwork. "You built this whole program?" he asked me. I nodded, suddenly nervous. "Yes, sir. People needed help understanding the process." He smiled and shook my hand. "This is exactly what government should do. Make things accessible." Press photographers followed him, and cameras clicked while I stapled someone's receipt to their application. The next day, my photo was in the local paper with a headline about making City Hall work for everyone. Mrs. Chin hung a copy on the bulletin board in our office. I tried not to think about whether Colton saw it. 2 weeks later, the auditors found something concrete. 2 invoices from Heart Remodeling for the Pine Street project had identical serial numbers. Same date, same materials listed, same amounts. Billed twice. It could have been an honest mistake, except the bank records showed both invoices had been paid and the money deposited. That wasn't a mistake. That was fraud. The auditors scheduled a formal hearing with all the contractors who'd worked on Pine Street. Colton's name was on the list. When the hearing notice went out, I was in a Saturday clinic teaching someone how to read a vendor contract. I got the notification on my phone and my stomach dropped. This was really happening. There was no going back now. HR called me in and offered to reassign me completely away from anything involving heart remodeling. We don't want even the appearance of a conflict of interest, the HR director explained. I appreciated that. I asked if I could stay focused on the public clinics and community outreach instead of application reviews. They agreed immediately. That meant I wouldn't be involved in any decisions about Colton's case. Other people would review the evidence and make the calls. The process would keep moving forward without me having any direct influence. It was the right thing to do. Even though part of me wondered if I should try to help him somehow, I knew I couldn't. Not without compromising everything I'd built. Not without betraying every honest contractor I'd helped. The hearing happened on a Thursday morning in a conference room with fluorescent lights that hummed too loud. I wasn't there, but I heard about it from Mrs. Chin. 7 contractors sat under those bright lights while auditors presented their findings. When they got to heart remodeling and read out the evidence of double billing, Colton's jaw flexed. He didn't say anything at first. Then he asked for a recess. The hearing officer granted it. According to Mrs. Chin, Colton walked out of that conference room and didn't come back that day. He sent his lawyer instead. But the evidence was the evidence. Numbers didn't lie. Documents didn't change just because someone needed them to be different. My phone buzzed that night with a text from Colton. Tell me what to fix. Just those 5 words. I stared at the screen for a long time. I thought about everything that had happened. The house, the lock, the midnight calls, the lobby scene, all of it. Finally, I typed back 3 words. Follow the checklist. Then I put my phone down. A minute later, another text came through. Just a single dot. Then nothing else. No argument, no excuses, no anger. Just silence. I didn't know if that meant he understood or if he'd given up. Either way, it wasn't my problem to solve for him anymore. He was an adult. He could figure it out. The compliance department closed their investigation 4 weeks later. Their final report listed 3 major findings. First, double billing on the Pine Street project totaling $8,000. Second, unlicensed subcontractor labor that violated safety codes. Third, unsafe electrical wiring installed without proper inspection. Their recommendations were clear. Heart remodeling needed to repay all improperly billed funds. They would be suspended from city grant eligibility for 1 year. And the case would be referred to the State Contractor Licensing Board for additional review. It was professional, thorough, and completely justified based on the evidence. I read the report when it became public record. Then I closed the file and went back to work helping people who actually wanted to do things right. Colton received the official city notice on a Monday. Repayment order for $8,000. 1-year debarment from any city-funded projects. Referral to the state board. He called me that afternoon. His voice sounded small and broken in a way I'd never heard before. Allie, please. You have to help me. This is going to destroy my business. I took a deep breath and said, there's a free contractor compliance class that meets every Tuesday at the community center. They teach you how to run your business the right way. That's where you need to start. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he whispered thank you and hung up. I sat at my desk and cried. Not because I felt guilty, but because it hurt watching someone you love face consequences, even when they absolutely deserve them. 3 months later, I launched a new program called the Clean Start Microgrant. It was designed for small contracting crews who'd made mistakes, but wanted to rebuild their businesses honestly. If they passed our compliance review and completed the training course, they could get a small grant to update their equipment or get proper licenses. Reporters asked me about it at the press conference. One of them said, "Isn't your brother going through compliance issues right now? Is this program for him?" I looked directly at the camera and said, "This program is for everyone who wants to follow the rules and build something legitimate. The rules exist to protect workers and customers. They protect everyone." The mayor signed a proclamation and shook my hand for the cameras. 5 months after everything fell apart, Colton showed up at one of my Tuesday evening clinics. He was carrying a folder of paperwork and he looked tired, but different somehow. Cleaner, maybe. More honest. He waited in line like everyone else, and when it was his turn, he sat down across from me. He had proper insurance now. Real payroll records. Licensed subcontractors. Everything organized correctly. I reviewed his new application and checked every box. It was complete. It was honest. It met every requirement. I looked up at him and he whispered, "Thank you for not cheating for me. For not bending the rules. I get it now." I nodded because I didn't trust my voice. Later, when the clinic ended and the lights clicked off, I stood alone in that community center room. I realized I hadn't just been fixing forms and applications all this time. I'd been fixing my own future, building something solid that nobody could ever take away. And that made everything worth it.